Hey, Kyle, what's your favorite Canadian rock band?
Arcade Fire.
That is incorrect. The correct answer is the Crash Jones Band, who performed this show's theme song, Diamonds Ain't Forever. Sorry for the setup. Welcome to episode 9 of the Up and In Dynasty League podcast. My name is Scott Slonaker. I usually forget to mention that. I've noticed I go back and listen to these episodes and it's like, oh, I didn't even say who I was. And you have to depend on the YouTube comments or you just have to know me, which neither of those things are reliable. So anyway, welcome, Kyle Bishop. We are going to get into some Colorado Rockies conversation. So rock fans looking for it's not Rocktober, I guess, but it's Rock July. So is that close enough?
Rock July. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, hey, some deadline trades are being made. It is very close to the trade deadline as this is being recorded. So, we're going to talk about that. We have trades between our two teams to talk about. We're going to just talk about some other stuff. You're going to show off your hat collection, hopefully, all this other stuff. So this is a good one, folks. I can tell, even though I don't know how it's going to turn out as I say this.
So far, so good, right?
So far, so good. That's right. Kyle, the first thing I need to mention, we're appearing side by side on the screen here. I'm wearing a $30 headset that I got for free from my work, and you have quite the audio setup. Tell me how you acquired this audio setup and also why.
Well, the why would be the quarantine and the pandemic happened and was slightly bored. I justify it a little bit that I thought I might need to teach from home, and so
absolutely
good webcam, good audio setup would be useful for recording stuff. But that didn't happen that as much as I thought it was going to. We ended up quarantined for a couple of days and recorded like 2 or 3 lectures from home, but for the most part we were back in person. So but yeah, the microphone's like $60 or something like that. The headphones I've had for a while now, that I basically made the decision, okay, you're going to spend $100 on headphones and they're going to last you like, I don't know, 6 years or something like that. And so they've been just running with that. So yeah, I also kind of fantasized about having my own podcast, but there's not really anything. There aren't any topics that I felt compelled to actually have a podcast about. So
seriously.
So I'm just going to guest on everyone else's.
Okay. So, okay. I was going to see, that's what I was going to ask you is, did you start a podcast? It makes sense though, as you are a professional educator. It would make sense about doing the stuff from home. So your school, this past school year, we're of course in the summer now, we're about to start up for 2021-22, but your school is mostly still going in person through last year. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, we
Wow.
Last fall we ended up coming back. We're kind of a smaller school, so we tried to accommodate a certain number of students totally online, and then the ones that were in person we split into a morning session and an afternoon session, and then supplemented that with more online like quizzes and just kind of sending extra stuff. It was a ton of extra work and it wasn't fun, but we were able to. I feel like it was kind of the terrible situation, but aside from going totally online, it's kind of the best that we could do. So
yeah. Now you teach at the high school level, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Chemistry and physics.
Chemistry and physics. Okay. I don't know why I assumed that you were teaching computer science, and I've probably said that on our Discord before, and so you really should have corrected me. Chemistry and physics. You are not the only chemistry and physics teacher that I know.
Oh yeah.
I have a friend who teaches at a private school in San Diego, and yeah, it's also chemistry and physics, and he worked like crazy. He had to digitize huge amounts. In California, they had a much stricter lockdown, and nobody was allowed to go in person. I don't think. It's possible fully private schools might have been allowed. I don't know. I think he works at a charter school, so it was under a district. in some way. And he worked like all the time, he was teaching his classes and he was like digitizing these entire subjects, and it just sounded really stressful.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have young children. My son is in first grade this past year. He's going into second grade. I'm trying to do I've worked from home for a long time, the last 5 years or so. And, I'm in here doing my work at this thing behind me. And, my son's in the other room, and listening to first graders do online education is I don't really know how I'd describe it. Occasionally there'd be a loud crash and I'd peek my head out and he has tipped his chair back and fallen on the ground in the middle of they're doing something. And like every 5 minutes they have a break or they stand up and stretch. And, I mean, it'd be like trying to force squirrels to stand in a line. You know what I mean? It just, and then my daughter who's in preschool, they didn't even bother trying. It was like, if you want to sign your kid up and bring them to preschool, we're going to do this. And, they had about half as many kids as they normally would have. Her class had 9 instead of like 20. And she went and, and it was okay. But I mean, those were much different experiences. So I can imagine that it was probably a little bit of a relief that you didn't have to go 100% full, online all the time, because it just seems like so much more work for the teacher.
Yeah. I know. I will say it's I don't know how anyone at the younger than high school level would have handled that. Like, that's just, I mean, it's hard enough getting things from people who are old enough that you can actually have like a conversation with them. So it was I mean, in the spring we shut down for fourth quarter and that was online. But it was the form of online where everyone just kind of looked at each other and were like, well, we got to do something. So it was then over the summer as everyone started to develop like this idea of what is the semester look like when we come back in the fall.
You're referring to the spring quarter of 2020, right?
That's right. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. The very beginning of the pandemic. I was just, okay. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Well, the timeline, living.
No,
these
I know
days.
it all kind of merges into this big. Bleh. So,
yeah.
So. Yeah, I don't. Okay. I was going to ask. I mean, did you have a plan worked out for how you would do? I mean, you're teaching chemistry. How are they going to do chemistry labs remotely?
Yeah, it was.
Did you have a plan for that?
There's online demonstration resources that you can take advantage of, but it's opening like a web page and pressing a couple of buttons, and then the online tells you, good job, you didn't explode something or whatever. It's, I mean, chemistry at the high school level really needs to be a lab-based, hands-on kind of thing. It's, I can tell you what an atom is all day, but if you're not actually doing chemical reactions, it's hard to take my word for it. So that was probably the biggest frustration of the last year. The physics, I mean, there's a little bit more that you can do. And I think for most students, the physics stuff conceptually already works a little bit better because it's generally on this larger scale. Like, you can talk about, I want to figure out how long it'll take for the ball that I threw to hit the ground. Well, you're not trying to imagine, what an atom is doing at the molecular level. So so that was, we didn't get quite as many labs in physics, but that was probably okay. But in chemistry, it's disappointing, but what can you do?
I was, as you were talking, I was thinking about my own high school experiences in these subjects. And that's when I remembered that I never took physics. So I have never had any of that stuff. I instead took 2 years of chemistry so that I could take the AP testing at college credit. And I remember sitting down to take the AP test, and I'm like, looked at it, and I was like, I am dead. I'm dead meat. And somehow I passed it. I don't know how. Nice. Maybe everybody else was dead meat too, and there was a curve. I don't know. But I ended up with 12 free credit hours in college, and I never took chemistry again. And so I have this weird hole in my education, basically. And it's just kind of funny because, like, I got pretty good grades in high school. I was a national merit finalist. I got a scholarship for that from a public university, not full scholarship, but a scholarship. And yet I've no clue how any of the physics. I mean, vaguely, there was, Newton, and there was Einstein, and that's, and yeah, dad brains probably wiped out a lot of the chemistry too. But I mean, I could look at an equation and probably at least sort of, I don't know. I mean, of course it doesn't help, but I didn't do any science things I didn't do science stuff for a living, but I don't know. It was just never, I don't know. For some reason, physics seemed really hard to me, and I was afraid that it would mess up my GPA or something. So I just stayed away from it. And I don't know why. There were, I remember looking at the class booklet. I went to a pretty large high school. There's a lot of stuff. And I was like, I am not going to touch human anatomy, and I am not going to touch physics. Those two things look way too hard, and then I stuck with, math. So, yeah. Which one of your subjects do you prefer, or do you like them both equally, or?
I think I have more of a physics mind. It just kind of makes more sense to me logically. I teach AP Physics 1, and that's probably my favorite class to teach, just because I prefer the physics, but also the students are at a level where it's
Absolutely.
much more like, okay, here's the information, now do some critical thinking for me. Like, that's
absolutely,
we do that at the honors level in chemistry, and for honors physics as well. We try and push them in that direction, but it's in AP it's so much more like, okay, if you've shown me you can handle like the math stuff and all this other thing, now, like, all right, there are these three objects rolling down a slope, which one's going to going the fastest, like, that kind of stuff. So
sure. Yeah, I mean, when there's a high stakes test at the end of the year, I remember our chemistry teacher in AP chemistry. We go through most of the year, and at the end of the year, he sent. I can't remember if he had a conversation with us or if he sent everyone each a letter, and it was basically his recommendation, like, should you even take the test, or should you just maybe not, because you might hurt the stats. You know what I mean? And so I got recommended to take the test, which was funny because, like I said, I looked at the test and I was like, oh my God, I still don't know where I pulled that one out of. And yeah, I mean, it's the AP tests are, you can kind of skip a bunch of stuff in college, and it's a different kind of class when you've got this goal at the end of the year. As a high school student, you're not used to that. You're just, you get through it and you get your grade and you go to the next year. With the AP test, there's this goal that you have to, and if you don't make the goal, I mean, it's not like your career in that subject is over, but I mean, it's got to feel like, you didn't accomplish what you set out to, and,
yeah. One of the things that I kind of realized, this was my second year teaching it. One of the things I realized this year is that I like it as well because it's us as a class versus the test. And so
sure.
if anyone is like complaining to me about something, I'm like, don't look at me. I'm trying to get you ready for the test. Like, this isn't me, don't get mad at me. It's the test. So whereas with like honors chemistry, it's like, yeah, well, I wrote those questions, and yeah, you should be mad at me.
I know the answer. Whatever. Yeah. Yeah. So your school doesn't do AP chemistry, or is that, I'm just curious.
Yeah, we do, but there's another teacher that does that.
Okay. All right. I will stop fixating on AP chemistry. I remember my experiences. So it was a long time ago. So yeah. Okay. Well, so I think the reason why I always had you pegged as a computer science teacher, and I don't know why, I know I can name off three facts about everybody in our, three facts about everybody in our league, even though, I mean, a few of them are my friends or my relatives. but most of them are not. They're not people I actually know. It's because you designed one of the features of our league that I think everybody holds near and dear, because we sort of, in an act of ultimate nerddom, we collected behind it, and so that is why our league has a draft lottery. So talk about the draft lottery, and it seems like it's like a classic computer sciencey thing, and I think that's where I got that from. So
yeah, well, I like spreadsheets.
I do too. I do spreadsheets for a living. I don't really know macros or stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I think probably what came first, because I was trying to look back at this today actually, because I knew it was going to come up. We'd done the lottery for a couple of years, and I was checking my messages with Brady, who was the old commissioner, and I couldn't find anything specific. So I'm sure there's like a post somewhere where I offered to do it, but he was like, "Hey, do you want to do a draft lottery?" And in the NBA, and I think the idea behind the draft lottery is the teams that are actively tanking, you come in last, or you come in like second to last. Do you want those teams to be guaranteed like a really good pick, or do you want them to have maybe better odds, but not necessarily be a guarantee that they're going to get the first overall pick or whatever it is? And I think with the NBA, it's especially important because those top couple of picks, we're actually recording this on the night of the NBA draft.
I know. I was actually going to point that out. You're ahead of me. So my team, the Trailblazers, doesn't have a pick in the first round. So I know I'm not missing anything. So, but yeah, I saw that it was on.
I don't really care about the Nuggets in the off season, just when they're playing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those things where if you like, getting the first pick can make or break your team for years, and so there's so much more incentive for those teams that are out of it to tank and get the next LeBron James or who have you. So yeah, Brady was just like, yeah, we should have a NBA style draft lottery, and I was like, okay, well, that sounds like a fun project, because how do they actually do it? And so I was trying to go through the Wikipedia pages of like, well, it's not just like a random number generator between these, those 14 teams or whatever. It's not just like, oh yeah, randomly we'll pick you. Well, what they do is they come up with 1,000 potential combinations of lottery numbers, basically. So it picks 4 numbers between 1 and 14, and then that specific combination is assigned to a team, and so the team that has more lottery odds has more of those kind of organized. They have more options, basically. So when the numbers come out, it has a better percentage of being this particular team. So I was like, oh yeah, and you could do that with a spreadsheet. Why not? Let's set up a random thing, print all the numbers, randomly figure out so that was kind of like an off-season sort of thing, like, hey, do you want to do this? And I was like, well, I like spreadsheets and this is a fun project, so just kind of went for it. Every year I try and I pull it back up in January or February, and I'm like, how did I set this up again? Anytime. I think this past year I changed it a little bit because the playoffs ended up shortened, or there were only like 4 teams in the playoffs last year instead of how many we normally have.
It's the reverse of what happened in regular baseball.
Because I think contracted playoffs.
Yeah, I think normally we have 6 in the playoffs. Am I right? Out of 14.
Yeah.
And so I would like to expand that, actually. I think that would. I was looking about how there's several of our owners who I don't think I've heard anything from in a month or two.
Yeah.
On the Discord or otherwise. And I'm thinking, you know what, if some of these teams that know they're not making the playoffs even at this point in the season, that's why. So we need to expand the playoffs. Just like Just like I have this thing I go on and on about how, you need to be able to, if you sign contracts that don't work out, you need to be able to cut those players and, and start over, because it's no fun being the team with the, all the dead money.
Yeah.
Unable to do anything. And so all these things need to be able to recover quickly. And one of the things I think that keep people involved, the draft lottery helps prevent tanking. And I really think they should do it in real baseball too. I don't know if they will. The baseball draft is a little bit more of a crapshoot. There's usually a few players at the top that are pretty likely to make the big leagues. I think the number 1 overall pick has like, what is it, a 60% chance of making the big leagues, something like that. Just making the big leagues. I mean, becoming a star, it's much lower than 60%. So it really, and then every year there's a Danny Holtzen or one of those guys that, I was talking about Danny Holtzen with Andrew in the previous episode. That's why he popped into my head. The guys that get hurt and don't make it. It's not like you were saying with the NBA. There's like, in an average draft, there's depending on the year, either a few or maybe up to 6 or 7 immediate impact players where this guy is going to start from the first game. And, and baseball just doesn't have that. So tanking for draft picks in baseball doesn't seem all that smart anyway, but teams are clearly doing it. And, we need to discourage that, because I'm pretty convinced. I forget where I read it, but it's a very convincing case that the tanking is what's causing baseball fandom to flatten out as much as it has in terms of people coming to games. I mean, obviously the COVID-19 thing that's a pretty big impact as well, but just even before that.
Yeah. I mean,
where you have a dozen teams not really trying to win as many games as they possibly can win.
Yeah. I mean, the Rockies come to mind for me. Like they're not going to
the Rockies.
Yeah. They're not going to,
we're going to talk about the Rockies, don't we?
Oh yeah. Don't get me started.
Go ahead. Rocky. They're a great example.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was 2017, 2018, when they had the back-to-back playoffs. I don't live in Denver. I'm down in Colorado Springs, and it's about an hour plus drive. I give myself 2 hours now just because there's been construction and whatever. So like in 2018, I probably went to like 8 or 10 games. Like it was pretty regular that I was getting up there. And then just 2019 and so far this year, it's like, what's the point if the team's going to be not that great? Coors Field is really nice, and there's always going to be good turnout. But I think there are probably a lot of fans that are just like, yeah, do I really want to see Rockies Diamondbacks on a Tuesday afternoon? And that's never gonna, not gonna mean anything. And it's So the tanking is a thing that really needs to be turned around. Not necessarily that the Rockies are doing it, but yeah.
I mean, I don't think they specifically are trying in the way that certain other teams definitely are.
Yeah.
I mean, do we want to name off some of them, or do we want to just let them? They know who they are, right? I can think of. I'm going to forget some of them, but maybe it's just because we're watching some of these trades happen now. Like I texted my friend who is a Cleveland fan, and I was like, "Why did Cleveland just trade their starting second base to the team that's ahead of them in the standings for a minor leaguer?" Well, I don't know. He sent me an emoji of like a guy going like this, and that's got to be. I mean, you're talking about a team that's above 500. Like, what else is that but tanking? I mean, I know it's not every trade is the, like the famous white flag trade where, the White Sox traded away like all their good pitchers in one trade or whatever. But I mean, what else do you call that? What else do you call a Cleveland trading away their, Cesar Hernandez? Cesar Hernandez isn't any superstar, but that was just an example that stood out to me. Like what's, the Cubs are trading several of their sort of not key, but players in key roles, relief pitchers and stuff. They're trading Anthony Rizzo, supposedly, maybe. I think they are.
Yeah, I think that one might be
I think
official.
that's final now, isn't it?
Yeah. As we're recording this, Scherzer is moving to the West Coast, but it's not totally
right
clear yet where, but yeah, it's the other thing that I think about too with that stuff is the recently there's been like so much more put on the top end prospects too, that even the return necessarily isn't going to be, you're not going to, clear out someone else's farm system for these guys either.
No, I was noticing that. Now, I want to separate something like with the Twins, where the Twins, everything has gone wrong for the Twins, and for the Diamondbacks is another good example. Like selling from a team that is in last place or is not going anywhere. I don't necessarily consider that tanking. I mean, tanking usually happens the most in the off season. But I also think it's tanking if you're in a decent spot, if you're Cleveland or the Cubs or somebody who is, and you're like, oh no, we're 8 games out of first place. Forget it. It's the season's over. There's only 60 left to play or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I'm relieved that my team, the Reds, are not doing, because they have been in that position. I've watched them trade off players when they have been in and they're like 45 and 45, and it's like, what are you doing? I don't necessarily think they're going to catch Milwaukee. In fact, I'm pretty sure they won't. It's not a bad bet to make when they're 7 games out, but I mean, they at least made a couple of gestures at trying to improve their bullpen. We can talk about the trade that the Reds and Rockies made here in a moment, by the way.
Yeah.
Because I have some opinions about that. Selling off players for assets when you are, when it's clear that it's not happening I don't consider that to be tanking by itself. The Twins had every intention of winning this year, I think, right? I mean, they have been really good for the last few years. I know they've had some playoff futility that's been bordering on embarrassing.
Yeah.
But they on paper they were pretty competitive, and just everything went wrong, and so it makes sense for them to trade off Nelson Cruz and people like that. So, and then you have something like Seattle, which nothing that team does ever makes any sense. I mean, they trade their closer to the team they're playing in the middle of the series, right? Kendall Graveman. They trade him. Everybody in the Seattle clubhouse is mad, right? Then the owner, the GM is like, oh, don't worry about it. Former Rocky Jerry Dipoto
yeah.
is like, oh no, don't worry, we're gonna. And then it comes out today that he's for some inexplicable reason, the Tampa Bay Rays are going to trade the Mariners' Diego Castillo, who's a pretty good relief pitcher, kind of like the one they just had, and it doesn't make any. It's like they're doing it just to do it. It's change for change's sake, and so the Mariners kind of get an asterisk because I don't know what the hell's going on there.
Yeah, it seems almost like they turned $1 into 95 cents or something like that. Like all this flurry of different deals, and they're the team that's in a position that right up against the trade deadline,
and they're doing well too.
Yeah,
better than I think everybody thought they were going to do.
So that's kind of like classically you should be buying, but it's Jerry Dipoto, so there's going to be a lot of selling involved in that buying. So
I know.
We'll see.
I mean, the Rays are really the only team that can consistently sell, and they still win. And it's amazing to me. I'm not about to go read a book written by the guy who's kind of been blacklisted from the sports writing field based on things that happened in his personal life. The only book that I know about the Tampa Bay Rays. But there's something going on there where they're just able to do it. And they're in a crappy market too, with a crappy stadium. And I mean, should they be should they be discarding players left and right? I mean, I'd like to say no, but they seem convinced they have to do it. But the point is they win, and they sell constantly, and yet everybody they plug in succeeds. And it's amazing to me.
Yeah. I imagine it's tough to be a fan if there is that much turnover. Like, I mean, I guess if you're heading out to the Trop, you're rocking your Evan Longoria jersey, but he hasn't.
You might as well just hold on to it. He might. Yeah. I mean, they're not gonna. They put players on. They put players on Logan's Run. As soon as they get to a certain age or make more than about $5 million, most of them. So, it's not like Evan Longoria is going to be back.
Yeah.
I mean, he's winding down on his career, I know, but the fact that someone like him would go to the Giants is just about perfect. Because the Giants are kind of the kings of trying to revive guys that are, in their 30s who are kind of not. They've had some tough times. I
and
say
it
this
seems
as
to be
someone
working this year.
Yeah, I know, and I say this as someone who had Brandon Crawford on his penalty list for a long time, because I cut him when he was hitting 230, and then suddenly he does a U-turn. Oh man! So, but I'm sure whoever the Rays plug in for Diego Castillo, maybe they'll go get Kendall Graveman, because who knows. But but whoever they plug in will be fine. That's the thing. So, but they again, they get an asterisk, I think. I was recalling an old Saturday Night Live sketch that this might be before your time a little bit, but it was back in the 90s, the time of my previous cultural relevance. And there was a commercial for a bank that did nothing but make change. And so the joke was, they're like, oh, I can get 5 $1 bills for a $5 bill, or I can get a 5 and 5 ones for a 10. And it's like, this is all we do. It's just, and it's like the joke being, ha ha ha, how do they make any money? But the Mariners are kind of like the change bank. They just sort of, I don't know. And so who knows? It fascinates me. Plus, they have a couple of ex-Reds prospects that I like to follow. So neither of whom seem to have had much success. That would be Shedlong and Taylor Trammell, who I hope succeed, but long after they, not immediately after they leave my team, right? You want them to succeed maybe later on down the line so that somebody else also made a mistake too.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, let's talk before we get too far afield. Let's talk about the trades that the Reds and Rockies made. So first of all, before the season, the club's the best kind of trade, it's like a straight challenge trade. The Reds had a guy named Robert Stevenson. The Rockies had a guy named Jeff Hoffman. Neither pitcher has lived up to their first round billing. Now I know Hoffman started with Toronto. Yeah. How did the Rockies get Hoffman? I can't remember.
He was one of the pieces of the Tulowitzki deal.
Tulowitzki, makes sense. First round pick, actually a top 10 pick, who has kind of never really missed enough bats to succeed. Big, tall guy, looks like a pitcher. 6'4", 6'5", and Robert Stevenson, not a top 10 pick, but dominated in the minors, struck out a bunch of dudes, in AAA. Both guys have kind of suspect control. They have control that kind of comes and goes. And so I think both players were probably about to be non-tendered by their respective clubs. And so instead they decided to trade. The two clubs decided to swap them. The Reds also got a prospect named Case Williams back, he was a high school pick, and he didn't pitch. He ended up not, pitching in 2020. So they make that trade, and everybody on the Reds end was tired of Bob Steve, as we would call him. I don't know what you guys call him, but got tired of Bob Steve. He had one moderately decent year in the Reds bullpen as a middle reliever. Basically, the Reds pitching coach, Derek Johnson, got him throwing, said, stop throwing all these other stupid pitches and throw only your slider like 75% of the time, because it's a good slider. I mean, the thing, it's evil. I mean, the thing moves like crazy, and he doesn't know where it's really going that much, but he throws that and an okay fastball, right? And so he was able to have some success doing that sometimes. And so we make that trade. I haven't checked Bob Steve's ERA. What is he still has a job, right?
I am actually looking that up now because I haven't heard from him in a long while. But I'm guessing there's some sort of injury thing.
There was an injury last year as well. He had a pretty messy year last year. I mean, everybody did, but he especially did. And I think he was just out of chances. I mean, he's been around he was in the minors for like 5 or 6 years. He was trying. I mean, everybody's rooting for him, but it just kind of never really coalesced. Even though you watched him pitch and it was like, this guy's got some stuff.
Yeah. On the shelf since late June with upper back tightness.
Oh
So,
man. Oh shit. Well, then I'm on the shelf for since I get upper back tightness about every single day. So anyway, I'm not a professional athlete. So okay. Well, so then it came time. The Reds in the offseason, real quick. The Reds in the offseason decided they needed to save some money, and so they decided they, in my opinion, correctly, decided that the bullpen was the place to do that because you can always find more bullpen guys because they kind of get recycled and there's a pretty sizable, slush pile for them. So they decided to trade Raisel Iglesias to the Angels for a guy named Noe Ramirez, who was actually cut in spring training, didn't even make the club. So basically they gave away Raisel Iglesias, who has made, I think, at least one all-star team. I could be wrong, but pretty solid closer, not great, but good. You trade him away for nothing. And then they also non-tendered Archie Bradley, who's a pretty established relief pitcher, not a superstar, but so they're like, we don't need those guys. We'll find some other guys. And so then their bullpen basically went to heck. And some guys got hurt. And they basically had like a 1990s Seattle Mariners bullpen for a while. I mean, it was messy, bad news. And so then, they were relying on NRIs, guys off the scrap heap, guys like Brad Brock, who was good 5 years ago, or Heath Hembry, who was good 5 years ago. These guys are getting the save chances, and it was ugly. So the Reds made two trades just recently. They got Luis Cessa and Justin Wilson from the Yankees for apparently nothing, because there's a player to be named later, and you're not allowed to trade recent draft picks as a player to be named later. The Trey Turner rules, they call it. You're not allowed to do that anymore, so it's not probably anybody of note. And they make a trade with the Rockies to get Michael Givens. And they send back Case Williams, who apparently both teams just love this guy. They play ping pong with this guy. And also you get another A-ball pitcher named Noah Davis, who was just drafted. I think he was drafted in 19, but he's a college guy, so he should probably move quickly. What do you think of this, if anything?
Well, I don't know.
I love this stuff.
There's not a lot that moves the needle for it really in either direction, in my opinion. The Case Williams coming back was he's a Colorado. He
yes
is a Colorado guy, so drafted by the Rockies and then traded away, but then coming back. I think some people were saying something along the lines of, well, since the Rockies fired their GM or he stepped down since then, it's the interim guy trying to right a wrong. I don't think it's anything that I don't know, a Game of Thrones or anything like that, but yeah, it's hey, this is a guy that we know and we like. Bring him back. And Givens was just it's a reliever. It's one of the two relievers that hasn't just exploded for the Rockies this year. So there's value here, you find, make the trade with the expiring contract and actually get something back instead of just letting them walk. I mean, you're not going to offer that kind of guy a qualifying offer, and
you're not going to get a draft pick for a relief pitcher most of the time. That's true.
Yeah.
Givens survived being on the Orioles for so long. That team has been so scarifyingly bad over the last few. I don't even know. I've said this before. I don't even know how they win as many games as they do, and they don't win very many. And he was kind of the closer on that team. So, I hadn't really ever watched him pitch. I think, honestly, the last time I thought about Michael Givens might have been the World Baseball Classic, whenever the last World Baseball Classic was. I'm pretty sure he was on that team. So, it's like, wow, we got somebody, and it's a name I've heard of. So they're playing the Reds are playing the Cubs today, and they're up by 2 or 3 in the seventh inning. They run Givens out there, and he goes out there and wham, 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 3 Cubs strike out on 10 pitches. And I was like, whoa. And it was all fastballs. And he throws 95, 96, 97, but he doesn't throw 90. That's, yeah. I mentioned this in a previous episode. The average right-hander's fastball now is 93 miles an hour. So 95, 96, 97 is like a 55 or maybe a 60 fastball, depending on the movement. It's a good fastball. But these guys, Wilson Contreras like fell on his ass trying to hit. I mean, it was amazing. And so I was like, where has this guy been? So it was pretty exciting to see that pay off like immediately. And I know it's not that exciting. My team has been on the receiving end of the A-ball pitchers so many times over the years that I know how that feels. Believe me, I'm not trying to, I mean, for every once in a while, these trades are made, and, it's the famous ones, Jeff Bagwell for Larry Anderson. Here you have this kid named Bagwell. We don't want this guy. Give you Larry Anderson, the veteran relief pitcher, to help take us to the playoffs, or, it can work out for both sides. Doyle Alexander for John Smoltz is another very famous one back in the 80s. Those are just the ones that come to mind. I mean, so these things happen, but most of the time it's a lot less dramatic than that. I mean, is Michael Givens going to be the key to the Reds World Championship? Probably not. But
yeah, I'd be surprised. But he's got stuff. He's a potential closer. I think he closed when he was with Baltimore.
How did the Rockies even get him? I don't even remember.
Oh, yeah, I should probably remember that too. But it was.
I tried to look stuff up during these conversations, so
I don't remember. I do remember though last year that he was kind of. And this year he's been the kind of the reliable reliever in addition to Daniel Bard, who was the closer.
Yeah, that's a great story. The Daniel Bard story is a great one.
Yeah,
he missed, what was it, 4 years?
Man, like it was at least, because
he was a very good pitcher for about 5 years with the Red Sox, and then just kind of lost his, like, he got the yips, right? He couldn't throw strikes anymore.
Yeah. I think it was. I'm trying to remember because there was a post that I made where Daniel Bard's last day, I think, was in 2013.
Okay,
and then because it was the day before Nolan Arenado's debut. And so last year when they announced that Daniel Bard made the team, it's like, oh yeah, Nolan's now been around since 2013. And this is a guy who hasn't like played in the big league since 2013. So yeah, awesome story. Just we'll see how long that lasts. It's not like this team is going anywhere. So keep walking him back out there and, whatever. But cool. Good for him.
Yeah. So Nolan Arenado. So I know this is probably so when this trade happened in the offseason, and are you a subscriber to The Athletic?
I probably. I think I'm not renewing, but yeah.
Oh, okay. There was some pretty pointed stuff in The Athletic specifically about the whole Rockies organization. And so the Arenado trade happens. They trade him to St. Louis, the team that is the bane of my baseball existence. And it's pretty fun to be ahead of them in the standings right now. I just want to say that because it's exceedingly rare. But the Cardinals, of course, I mean, it could have been the Dodgers or somebody too, or the Yankees, but it was the Cardinals. Of course it was, get this established star player, who he made 5-6 all-star teams, something like that. He made the all-star team this year too.
Yep.
Yeah. And, the Rockies kind of get a sack of magic beans in return. And that's not entirely fair because, I mean, there are definitely some major league. I mean, there are a couple of actual major league players in that group. And then there's a couple of, guys that have chance to be major league players. It's not like it's, I mean, I'm gonna rattle off some trades for you, or at least one trade that's in my mind that I'm gonna talk about after this that is way worse than this one. Trust me. So, when the Reds had to trade Aroldis Chapman to the Yankees, holy crap. Anyway, so were you surprised when the Arenado trade happened, or? I mean, he's the franchise cornerstone. He's signed to a super long-term deal, right?
Yeah, I had differing opinions at different times is kind of how it went. I was so sure, like, for the longest time, like, oh yeah, no, he's not going to go anywhere. And I think it was like not until a couple of days before when the chatter actually got real that it was like, yeah, this is probably going to happen.
That fast, huh?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, everyone because it would be taunts from other fans online that would be like, "Oh yeah, they're trading Nolan," and I'm like, "Why would you do that? You've got him signed for another however many years."
It was six
But
months after the extension was signed. Am I right? Something like
I
that.
I mean, yeah, that's
It's
well,
basically one season after he signed this extension for, what was it, 7, 8, 6? It was a lot of years.
yeah, um, yeah, because he got traded like in February. I think it was probably a year after he signed that extension. But yeah, it was. I mean, if basically they got him to sign the big long extension, and there was an understanding, I think, that he had that, okay, this means that they're going to make the team like we're going to try and put a really good team around this superstar.
Mhm.
And then they didn't do that. And then Nolan got very not happy about all that, which I don't think you can blame him. So
I mean, he came to that conclusion within like this sort of. I mean, I realize he wasn't traded within a 6 month period. After I think if I like you said, he might have been traded about a year after he signed the extension, but um,
yeah, it
supposedly
was.
he wanted to be like he made up his mind that this what he was promised wasn't happening about 6 months or about basically from the beginning of the season to the end of the season.
Yeah, it was the 2019 season that just was
2019, yeah.
like, because he signed it prior to the 2019 season and then was traded. Or
The yeah before. Wait, no,
what
wait, wasn't
year
he
is it?
just traded this past off season?
Yeah. The
Okay,
extension was in 2019, but
okay,
yeah.
sorry.
I'm remembering what room I was in when I heard about it, and I
Oh,
was like, that would
geez.
have to be 2019.
Okay,
So,
yeah, and he's
but
yeah.
yeah, so yeah, the chatter had happened all throughout 2020 as well, and it was kind of like, well, they underperformed in 2019, they underperformed in 2020, and that there wasn't a commitment from ownership and from the front office to actually make the team good, put
Okay,
good players
yeah.
around him. So
So that makes more sense then if he signed it before 2019 because it seemed like that would be quite a hasty conclusion to have signed before the pandemic season and then I mean he wouldn't have known at the time that he signed if he signed in February 2020 for example he wouldn't have known that it would be pandemic season I guess nobody did right but
you're not asserting that he orchestrated the pandemic, are you?
I would never say that. So you cannot orchestrate a pandemic by winning gold gloves. It doesn't work that way. So that right? I feel pretty confident in that.
Far as I know,
I'm
far
not
as
a
I know.
doctor. I'm not a doctor or an all-star third baseman. So whatever. Okay, but so that makes sense then that he gave it to 1 full year plus. Okay, and so
Yeah.
then by then, okay,
Yeah.
and it sounded the the stuff that I read made it sound like it was almost personal between him and the Rockies GM. And
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I also tried not to read a lot of that stuff just because I was not totally pleased with the outcome of that. But yeah, it was kind of it ended up becoming sort of if you're the owner, if you're Dick Monfort, are you siding with the player who has performed admirably and is looking for you to spend more money,
mm-hmm.
or are you going to side with the general manager? And so the pick was, okay, with the general manager is our guy. Nobody liked that. Nobody was happy with it. So then you trade Arenado, and then things come out about dysfunction within the front office. During the 2020 season, the analytics department was pressed into service doing laundry as well. So that was also an athletic scoop that
Okay.
the
That's
Rockies don't
yeah.
have. The don't that They have some analytics department, and
Mm-hmm.
but they don't use them well, apparently.
Okay.
So it kind of, all the things that came out as the storm after the trade then sort of made it like, okay, you know, we decided that this is the guy we're going to go with. We're going to go with Jeff Bridich as the general manager. And then the trade happens and it looks so bad that now Dick Monfort is like, well, now I have to get rid of the general manager. So,
Yeah,
so it was
that's
kind of
true.
like, well, you know, now we don't have either of them. So, little rudderless, but, you
Yeah.
know, that's, there's always, there's always times like that. I think back to like 2014, like 2012 to 2014, when the team was like not good and also never getting better. And
Mhm.
it's like, yeah, you know, but then they turned it around. Like
Yeah.
Bridich being promoted after O'Dowd left. That's the other thing too, is they
Odell
never
was
really
getting a lot of heat.
fire anybody.
Yeah.
It's there's just this frustration of they don't fire anybody. They always promote from within. And so the Rockies as a culture are so insular that they're, you know, they could do something so backwards
It's a good
as
point.
you know, have an analytics department that's, you know, 4 people or however many it is, instead of, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things to complain about. So
Yeah. Hey, the Reds have that reputation as well. You know, Dick Williams, the former Reds GM, was a relative of one of the ownership group.
mhm.
Um, and you know what? He was not a bad GM really, but I'll tell you, he had kind of an uphill because he didn't, um, you know, his credentials were. I think he'd worked for the Cardinals. Some of the ownership group, of course, had been part of the Cardinals, of course. Damn it. Anyway, so but the um, he did not. You know, he had all this baseball experience, but he hadn't. You know, he didn't. He wasn't an ex-player. He wasn't an ex-scout. You know, like it was. So the fans, he had an uphill battle proving himself to the fans, and I actually think he did a lot of things that were good for the team. He actually they did a lot better with their marketing and with all the stadium experience and all that kind of stuff. Like I give him credit for that. Like you know, people don't have that kind of eye roll experience. And I'll talk about the Cincinnati Bengals in a little bit because they are kind of legendary for being themselves. Um, but you know, so and then when Williams suddenly after last season is like, or was it after 19? Whatever, I don't remember. I dad brain. He's like, I'm stepping down, and they promoted from within. They promoted his assistant to be, you know, to be the GM, and you know, and then it's like, okay, what has this guy done? He's just kind of hung around in this front office for 15 years. Nick Kroll's his name. I don't have any negative feelings towards Nick Kroll. It's just, you know, Nick Kroll, um, you know, it's just, it drives message board people crazy, you know, I mean, but message board people are always going to be unhappy with this kind of stuff. When the Reds had Walt Jocketty, who was an established winner as a GM, had won the World Series with the Cardinals, of course, or whatever. Probably, please don't fact check me, but I mean, he'd been very successful in the past, mostly with the Cardinals. He comes to the Reds. You know, he did put together a playoff team, a couple of playoff teams. They didn't get past the first round, but they got to the playoffs. And then once that team started to flag, then everybody's like, oh, you know, Walt's just asleep up in the GM chair. You know, he's not doing anything, doesn't give a crap. And then, of course, he retired. Dick Williams takes over, and they're like, who's this guy? He has no credentials. I mean, there's just no way that sometimes it's very hard to be, you know, the GM just 90% of GMs are either anonymous or are complained about all the time. I mean, there's only a few GMs that, you know, I mean, Billy Beane, of course, comes to mind, right, as the guy who did all the great. I mean, there's a movie about him, for Christ's sake, you know. But
Yeah, but
I
you're
mean,
always a lightning rod for criticism, right? It's people don't celebrate Jerry DePoto.
no,
You know, they complain about, you know, why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? You know.
Jerry DePoto is great at creating content for the, you know, for the baseball blogs, but yeah, I mean, honestly, it seems surprising and random that the Mariners were good this year because, frankly, the Mariners have not been good in quite a while.
Yeah.
And, you know, the best Mariners teams there ever were. This goes back to when I was in college. They in the late '90s, they were at their best, and you know, they had that one. Well, was it 2001 when they had They won, what was it, 116 games or something. It was after they lost both A-Rod and Randy Johnson.
Yeah, that was the first year they had Ichiro, I think.
Yeah, right. And
I actually lived. I was born in Alaska. My dad was in the Air
Oh, wow.
Force.
Yeah.
Well, we were up there in 2000 to 2003, and I sometimes regret that I was a little young to kind of tell what was going on. But Ichiro was my favorite player for a couple of years, and yeah, I don't remember enough of that 2001. But in Anchorage, that was the region that we were in. It's like, okay, you get Fox Sports Northwest, so
Yeah.
here, watch them. So
Yeah, the Mariners try really hard to cast a very wide net. As I lived in Portland for 10 years, the Mariners would fight like hell if they ever. There's a group right now trying to bring a major league expansion team to Portland, which is, if I'm not, I think it is still the largest market in the TV market in the United States without an MLB team. And they'll never get, I don't want to repeat myself too much over past episodes. The public will never give them any tax dollars for a stadium. But if they were to bring a team in, the Mariners would fight like hell because they consider Portland part of their area. I mean, they have, that team. I mean, I suppose the Rockies have a pretty decent sized geographic area where they don't have a lot of direct competition either. But the Mariners probably have the largest just off the top of my head, probably have the largest area where they could conceivably draw. Maybe not. I mean, I don't know how many fans were driving down from Alaska to go to Mariners game, but I mean, if you could be on TV, maybe in 2001, I don't think they had MLB TV though, did they? I was just thinking, like, how could you get money out of the people in Alaska? I guess, just the eyeballs you'd get ad dollars on your TV network, right?
Yeah.
That's always worth something. But they have the largest area where they try to, they used to I used to see billboards in downtown Portland, like they wanted you to ride a bus to Seattle. And there was this, and I can't remember what the billboard tagline was. Basically, they wanted you to get on a bus, come to Seattle, watch the Mariners game, get wasted, and then safely take the bus back to Portland. Like this was a trip you were supposed to take. And this is when the Mariners the Mariners have not really been that good at all since basically 2001. So, you're going to watch some crappy baseball and drink yourself blotto and come back. And you're going to do it safely on this bus, that probably has Wi-Fi. So the Mariners, it doesn't surprise me. And just wait till they get past this. They line up some funding. I mean, they have a ballpark site and everything in Portland. If they ever get anywhere closer to getting a team, you will start hearing from the Mariners. They have been quiet so far. They do not want that. So anyway, it's going to be interesting if that happens. I personally think they'll put teams in other places because I think there are still parts of America that will give public money to a baseball team to come in.
Yeah, don't people always say Nashville is the other one? Portland and Nashville. I want to see Montreal again. I think
I do
that would
too.
be fun.
I think Montreal was interesting. I mean, I know that the Expos didn't draw that well at the time that they moved, but they also had a complete jerk of an owner who was bound and determined to. I don't even know that he really wanted to move. I don't think he had anything to do with Washington D.C. Right, but he wanted to make a lot of money. And so I mean, I'm trying to remember. Did Jeff Loria sell the team before they moved or after?
I can't recall. Probably before. I read a book on the topic by the same person that you referenced earlier, where it has been blacklisted. So, but I can't remember any of the details.
That's right. He did write a book. Those are the two books that he's written, right?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I haven't read them, but so right. Yeah, I'm not saying anything. I'm not going to, forgot about that. So anyway.
I bought it for the Larry Walker stories.
Yeah, I bet. But it would be great to see a team in Montreal again. I mean, it's a humongous city. It's humongous. Like, it is a big market. I know that there are problems with, the Canadian, having the team be in a different country. the exchange rate and all that. They always used to say that they couldn't get free agents to go there because the exchange rate and stuff. That's part of the reason why the Expos got good at player development. They had the famous team that was leading the league when the strike wiped out the rest of the '94 season, and that was going to be the year, and then they didn't get to finish that year. But I would love to see Montreal as well. I also think it'd be fun to see Mexico City, although I'll tell you what, from what I read about Mexico City and its topography, it would make Coors Field look like you were playing in Death Valley. So
yeah, I think they're at something like 8,000 feet or something like that.
yeah,
that would be, it would put everyone to, it would make everyone rethink their Coors takes, but
right. I mean, I feel like the humidor has the humidor has been around for a long time now, right?
Yeah.
I feel like the humidor has cut down a lot of the craziest part of it, and so now it's. I mean, am I right? It's still the high. It still has the highest park factor of any ballpark, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. I have not bought Baseball Prospectus, the book, in a couple of years now. So
I think people assume it's home runs, and it is home runs to a certain extent, but that outfield is just so gigantic.
Yeah, right. That's very true. It's doubles and triples, right? I mean, there are more triples hitting. There have to be more triples hitting Coors Field than any other stadium, right?
Yeah, I always think about. I can't remember why I think about it, but anytime I think about someone say triples at Coors Field, I remember that Matt Kemp hit the first cycle in Padres history at Coors Field, because the Padres had existed for 50 some odd years or whatever it was at the time, and it's like they've never hit a cycle. Well,
that's right. That's right.
They hit a triple.
I didn't realize that was actually they got off the cycle schneid. So
yeah, I might have been at that one, but I don't recall. It just stuck in my brain. And then of course when the Rockies got Matt Kemp last year, I was like, oh yeah, fun fact. So
yeah, Matt Kemp lasted like a month in Cincinnati too. So isn't he on Team USA now? Isn't he on the Olympic baseball team?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, they had some veteran guys. They had Homer Bailey and Todd Frazier, two fairly famous high Reds draft picks. And I don't think Homer Bailey actually stayed with the team. But I think Todd Frazier's on the team. And that guy is a guy you want on your Olympic baseball team. I remember when I remember for some inexplicable reason I was in college again. Watching the Little League World Series, and it was the year when Todd Frazier's team won the Little League World Series, and he was like 12. And then when he was drafted by the Reds out of Rutgers, they were like, oh, and the videos were out and stuff, and it's like, here's Todd Frazier winning the Little League World Series, and it's like, this guy wins in competition, and everybody loves Todd Frazier pretty much, except for Adam Eaton. Apparently, those two hate each other, but Todd, I guess he kind of lost his ability to hit over the last couple of years. He's getting into his mid 30s. And so, but I bet you, and I don't think Olympic baseball has started yet. Could be wrong. I don't think it has. But I bet you Todd Frazier bats about 571 in the Olympics if he's still on that team. And I can't wait to see that happen. I hope I get a chance. So I actually, after this interview, I'm going to go check on the Olympic baseball team because I want to know. So, this kind of, I don't know what it is with me in these tournaments. I mean, the World Baseball Classic is kind of, I know it hasn't been happening really. Was it supposed to happen next year? Maybe. I don't remember. It was canceled because of the pandemic, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was, I think they wanted it to be like a 4-year cycle, like the World Cup of soccer.
Oh, it's 4. Okay. I thought it was every 3, at least at first.
It started out, I think, I think they did the first one. They're like, this was so fun. Let's do the next one as soon as possible. And then it was 3, but I don't. Yeah.
I mean, all the stuff about, how, it's kind of like with Olympic basketball too. Like the U.S. has the most talent, but not as obvious in baseball as it is in basketball, but, they have the most talent, but then, like some of the talent doesn't want to play. And it's like, are they going to play? Are they not going to play? Who are they going to pick? And then you see this, and, the all-star teams don't always play the best in a short series or in just a few, in a round robin tournament. And I don't know, that stuff's just silly to me. Cause I don't know. You'd see him in a different, get to see him in a different setting. I watched the first U.S. men's basketball game, and Damian Lillard, who's the best known player on my NBA team, and Damian Lillard's wearing a blue jersey, and throwing up bricks everywhere and going like 2 for 11 from the floor. It's like, who is this guy? This is the guy who does Dame time. He's probably beaten the Nuggets with a few 3-pointers. He's beaten everybody.
I was at the game. I was at the game in June where Dame put up 55 and the Nuggets prevailed in double overtime.
This is where I was going to say, this is where you can point out the Nuggets defeated the Blazers in this year's playoffs, and they made a bunch of rumors fly that Dame is going to ask out of Portland because it was like, why can't we beat this team?
No, and I'm not the biggest basketball fan, but that was such an insane, it was such an insane game, because as it was coming down to, as the clock was ticking down in the fourth, every time the ball was in Dame's hands, it's like, okay, that's another 3 points.
It's like, scary,
how
man.
do you, it was wild.
That guy. Yeah. And he's a lot of fun to watch. And, and the team's defense is terrible. It's like watching the team that can score, 10 or 12 runs a game, and then the bullpen's going to give up 13. They have some of the best scoring in the NBA, and then they had like the 29th rated defense this past year. It's just like really frustrating. It's like, oh gee, we lost 138 to 135 again. Fantastic. Can't wait. So
well, with the Olympic stuff, I often think I'm a little bit of a soccer fan.
Okay.
I often think
I can tell by the collection of scarves behind you on the wall. Yeah. I realize that the Predators is hockey, but I get that. Yeah.
Yeah. Got a couple of soccer ones, a couple of hockey ones.
A lot of hockey fans in this league, by the way. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think with soccer, there's so much prestige behind playing for your country and playing for the World Cup that even though there are players on massive gargantuan contracts, they still are like, I want to play for my country first. Mm-hmm. I think in some of the other sports, with the basketball and with baseball, it comes down a little bit to the teams need to protect their investment. And so with the World Baseball Classic, MLB, I think, runs that, or is pretty heavily involved.
They twist arms, definitely.
Yeah, that it's kind of like, well, you want Max Scherzer to pitch in February, do you want him to do that under the watchful eye of the United States, or under, the team that's paying him so much money, whatever team that happens to be at this point?
I know the pitchers are the big problem. I don't think a lot of the hitters necessarily mind, most of them, but the hitters, the pitchers, it's not happening at a good time for them. Honestly, if they want everybody to want to participate, they're probably going to have to I know MLS has done this before, where they stop the season for like 3 weeks because the World Cup is happening. And, and I know that baseball's never going to do that either. So they're just going to have to stay with this. And the World Baseball Classic isn't really for the United States anyway. It's really to promote baseball in these other countries. It's just really funny, like you said, the difference between, the soccer players like, I want to represent my country, and then the baseball players are like, God, I got to go kick Australia's ass. They don't want to be there, and it's like, well, gee. So I don't know. I kind of love that stuff. It just makes me laugh. All right. Okay. Well, what do we? Let's switch gears, because these things get so far afield. What can I say? And I get going, and it's really hard to shut me up. I majored in this. This is just so. But I didn't stay in it. So until now, you are sort of semi-legendary in our league, other than being the architect of the draft lottery, which we all love and appreciate. You are somewhat legendary for your hat collection. Talk to me about your love of hats, and what hat are you wearing right now? That is some sort of a lizard.
Yeah, creature. This is the Auckland Tuatara.
Oh, that's the Tuatara. Okay, so Nathan in episode 7 referred to you being a fan of the Tuatara in the Australian Baseball League. So, it's too bad that I didn't realize that Brisbane was hosting the Olympics until after I talked to him. I was going to bring that up anyway. Yeah, well, they got a city to do it. It's amazing. Nobody wants to host the Olympics anymore. So tell me tell me how you got into hats, and then you can also talk about how you became a fan of the Tuatara if you'd like.
For sure, yeah. The hats is a little bit of a recent thing.
Okay.
I've always, ever since I was young, I've worn baseball caps.
Okay.
But as far as like starting to collect baseball caps, I didn't really. It's not until the past like year or two that's kind of become a thing that I've spent a lot of time and money on. I just sort of realized after a while that, oh yeah, I happen to have a lot of these. I mean, especially Rockies hats, all these different variations in Rockies hats. And so then, in the past year or so, it's become sort of you might as well display them instead of keeping them in a pile. And once you've got a display, it's like, well, what would look good on the display? What are you interested in? So it started primarily with Rockies hats, and that's still mostly what I gravitate towards. But some of the cool, like what the minor leagues will do, the kind of interesting promotions. So I've got like the Fresno Tacos hats. I've got
the tacos. I've seen pictures of that one.
Yeah, I've got a couple other food ones, like the green chili cheeseburgers that Albuquerque does, and
the isotopes, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. They do that promotion as well. So that was kind of like, well, these really cool looking minor league ones, like it's neat to grab a couple of those, something like that. I've got a couple of Tuatara hats now, just because I became such a big fan of them. And so the one thing that I did, one of the neat things that I found out while purchasing them is that the New Zealand dollar is only like 60 cents on the United States dollar. Oh. So it was something along the lines of, I was looking at the getting a jersey of theirs, and it was like, oh man, like $100-something. And it's like, well, it's $60 after the conversion rate. I was like, oh, sweet. So
there's a lot of shipping from New Zealand, I guess, but
the shipping
$20 or so for that.
Pretty massive, but yeah, we'll grabbed a couple of those for the collection. So
how did you end up picking the Tuatara? Did you just, is it just an interest? I mean, I know what a Tuatara is, vaguely. It's like a large poisonous lizard type. Is it poisonous? Maybe.
I don't believe
it's a large desertish lizard.
It's ancient. The big draw is that it's, I believe, the oldest living organism that that they haven't evolved in hundreds of thousands of years or whatever it is. So they're
got it. Okay,
they've been the same for forever. So I watched the Australian Baseball League just kind of off and on for a while, because it's November to February most years.
That's right. Yeah, Nathan talked about that. It's an interesting time. It's a great time of year because there's no other baseball really.
Yeah, and I've got very often I'm on winter break in towards the end of December, so it's turn on the game and watch it. The thing with New Zealand is I'm in mountain time, so New Zealand is 20 hours ahead of me, which is 4 hours behind me and then a day ahead. So for their regular evening games or 7 o'clock first pitch, well, I can watch that. I can stay up, and it starts at 11, and then you're watching until 1 or 2. It's on a Friday night or a Saturday night, you can do that. And then their Sunday day games were one in the afternoon local. Well, that's just a 5 o'clock first pitch for me. So it was kind of a no-brainer. The rest of the Australian teams are a little bit too far away that if you want to stay up and watch, like you're staying up until like 3 or 4 in the morning. So there are some weekends in in our winter when you'll wake up and check, and Perth, way on Western Australia, is wrapping up their game. So you can kind of stay up to watch the Tuatara, or wake up early and watch Perth. But yeah, it made more sense. And then so they existed kind of for a year, and I was a little bit of a fan, but it was the 2019-2020 season that I really got into them, and I tried to start to schedule myself and my sleep to catch as many of the games as I can, because I think it's just neat. I mean, New Zealand doesn't have any other professional baseball teams, and so if it's a game that can gain traction, in that part of the world, I think that's pretty awesome. And
Sure.
they made it into the playoffs. They won their division that year, and then made the playoffs, and then lost their only home game. But that home game, I believe, was the highest attendance in the Australian Baseball League history. They had 4,000 to 5,000 people, packing a converted, I believe it was a rugby ground at one point. They converted into it's a converted rugby ground turned into a baseball stadium, and a couple thousand people turned out to support the team, and I thought that was pretty neat. So.
Yeah, I mean, baseball's got an uphill climb in Australia. We talk. I mean, I know you said you listened to the episode with Nathan where we talk about that. We talk about Australian rules football and soccer and stuff. And baseball is basically, I think he said it was fourth. He thought it might be fourth behind, fourth behind Australian rules football and quote unquote regular rugby, and then also soccer.
Yeah.
And that's a tough hill to climb. And he was saying that a lot of the games have attendance that is more like in the hundreds.
Yeah.
So to have 4,000 or 5,000, that's pretty good. I mean, it sounds to me like the thing that I thought of was the California League, or the complex. I mean, the complex leagues. I think some of those games are played before almost no people. Or only a handful of pensioners, right? But the California League, I remember when the Reds had a team in Bakersfield, and that was the year Billy Hamilton stole 160 bases or something, 155 bases for the Bakersfield Blaze. And I remember I would always check the attendance on the score, and it was like attendance 974, and I was like, how do these teams even stay in existence? I mean, if you notice, the Major League Baseball kind of more or less killed the California League in this realignment, right? They got rid of the Pioneer and the New York Penn, and California League either got shunted down to low A, or I don't know, but they went after them. And
yeah, I don't know anything really beyond my local sphere, but in Colorado Springs we have a Pioneer League team. The Rocky Mountain Vibes are no longer affiliated with.
I was going to ask you about this. Thanks for bringing it up. The Pioneer League. So I was comparing the so God bless the Australian Baseball League. There's a bunch more about it in episode 7. If for some reason you the listener are listening to, or the watcher, whatever you want to call it, the Witcher, whatever. If you haven't seen episode 7 and you're interested, go check it out. There's a lot more stuff with Nathan, and he talks about it's great. That part of it's great, I think. The Pioneer League. So I've been following that for a while. I'm kind of fascinated about the Pioneer League because all those teams were kind of in a spot in the country where there's not really there's no other professional baseball for the most part, with the exception of the Rockies. Obviously, the Rockies are there in Denver, and there's not a lot of professional baseball that close to Denver. If you look, I remember when I used to fly from Portland to Ohio and back. Now I live in Ohio. I lived in Portland for a while, so we would go back and forth. It's about 2,000 miles, and Denver is basically the halfway point there. Denver is 1,000 miles. You think, wow, Colorado, that's it's another 1,000 miles. Once you get to Denver, you have another 1,000 miles to go to get to the coast. That was kind of amazing. It show how huge the Western states are. And that always kind of was interesting to me, because if you look at the map of the United States, the way it's usually presented, it doesn't necessarily convey that well. So the Pioneer League is in all these places. They were in Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, right? They had Casper, I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
Casper at one point, I think that
yeah,
ceased existence. But yeah, like
yeah, they had it.
Utah,
The
they got a
Casper
couple teams,
Ghosts,
I
if
think,
I'm
in
not
Utah.
mistaken, right? Wasn't the Casper Ghosts?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Casper Ghosts. I think they ended up turning it. The Casper Ghosts were a Rockies farm team, and then became the
Yeah.
Casper. I believe they became the Casper Rockies before moving to Grand Junction. So
Grand
they
Junction, right?
still
Colorado, Grand Junction, Colorado.
exist. Grand Junction, Colorado. That's right.
Yeah.
So
Okay. So, the Reds had Billings, Montana as an affiliate since like the 1960s or something. I mean, it was like one of the longest running affiliations in professional baseball. And, Billings had built a new park just a few years ago. I mean, like, I feel really bad for Billings. Um,
yeah,
and it just, that league, I really think Major League, I think this is not a hot take. I think this is, but Major League Baseball, they're looking at that and they're just seeing, expenses. But, that baseball, the people who live in those areas, and they get the chance to go see professional baseball in Boise or Billings or Casper or wherever, and they maybe don't go, they maybe don't get a chance to go to that many big league games, and you still are building baseball fans for the future. I mean, those fans are not going to necessarily live in those places for the rest of their lives. They might be moving to a lot of them move to Denver, or they move to Seattle or whatever, and I mean, and then that's somebody who'd spend the money. It's just so short-sighted that
yeah.
and I have a feeling the Pioneer League will um, I mean, I think it's supposed to live on, right? I mean, it's now a college, like they're trying to get college players, or do you?
I believe they have some sort of agreement with college teams or maybe some foreign teams. I don't know the specifics.
Yeah.
I haven't been to a Rocky Mountain Vibes game this year or ever yet. So,
Okay.
but yeah, it's it is kind of sad because it here in the Springs, like I mentioned, it's a couple hour drive to get to see a Rockies game. But
Don't
if
you
you
have
want
the
to drive,
Sky Sox though?
Sky
Or
Sox became the Vibes.
oh, I'm sorry. Okay, but
Yeah.
Colorado Springs used to be the AAA Rockies team, right?
Yep. Yep.
But not anymore.
They were the AAA Rockies team. Then they became the AAA Brewers team. And
Oh,
then
weird. I don't think I remember
when,
that.
yeah, when the Rockies got Albuquerque, that became their AAA. That was a few years
Okay.
ago now. I don't remember
Okay.
how many, but yeah, then, but yeah, they were the Sky Sox under the Brewers for a couple of years, and then there was the Sky Sox under the Brewers as a single A team. The Brewers moved their AAA operations to San Antonio,
Okay.
and so basically, yeah, baseball has been dying a slow death in this city. But we've got minor league soccer now. Colorado
Okay.
Springs Switchbacks is one of
Oh, the
these.
switchbacks. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. That
So
explains that.
the,
Um, yeah, I just I don't know if fans are gonna. I mean, I understand probably the biggest thing about the Pioneer League that you would hear, other than um, it being in places where there was not a lot of accessible big league baseball, was that the players generally hated it because they had these stupendously long bus
oh
rides.
yeah,
Uh, and so I can see how, from a geographic perspective, that was kind of a problem. I mean, the clubs, would have to listen to that complaining. But I don't know. I hope that league lives on, because that's a really. I mean, I know there's not a lot of people in this part of the country that the Pioneer League is covering, but I think if it completely goes away, that's something you're not going to be able to get back. Um, so
yeah.
and yeah, so the Rocky Mountain Vibes. So they're part of this. They're part of the new Pioneer League, and
Hmm.
wouldn't they have started play by now? Do you have any idea? I mean, I should get.
Yeah,
I didn't know I was going to talk about
they're
this. So
a shorter season. I think they started in beginning of July. Mm. Uh, I should
yeah,
also know, but I don't know. So
yeah. I mean, around this time, the draft was moved up a little bit on the calendar, And so players would sign, and a lot of the college players who were not usually like, if you drafted it was one of the first couple rounds, you had the college player, that guy might go to A ball, but a lot of the lower college picks and stuff would go to the Pioneer League, or now of course they either have to go to low A or they have to go to the complex. They have to go to the Arizona or Florida. And so I know those players have started to trickle in from the 2021 draft signees. Have started to trickle in to those teams, but it's, I don't know. I understand why I can see why they, on paper it made sense to consolidate the minors a little bit, but yeah, I don't know. It's hard to get used to. I used to follow the minor leagues a lot closer than I do now. I used to be the guy who wrote up game recaps for the message board 10, 15 years ago. It was a thing. I can remember clamoring for Zach Kozar to get called up at long last because he was hitting 350 in AAA. Anyway,
yeah.
Or Zach Kozar.
I ended up becoming not a prospect hound, but I got into I got into paying a little bit more attention to the farm system as a consequence of becoming starting to play fantasy baseball, because I didn't do it when I was in high school. In college, I joined like a fantasy league one year, and then the next year I joined this league, and was and part of that was from finding the Up and In podcast just as part of trying to get more information, like all that stuff. So I listened to, Baseball Prospectus is a good organization. They've got all this information. Well, is there a digestible podcast format of what they're doing? So starting to listen to a few different baseball podcasts and absorbing that. And that was my entry into the world. And there were a couple of years there where I had a Baseball Prospectus subscription and was trying to really keep track of that, partly to do well in fantasy baseball and partly to, I don't know, think more about the Rockies, because that was a time of, it was the time in franchise history where it wasn't fun to watch the actual team. It was more like, but
theoretical.
Think about these.
Yeah.
Think about how good these guys are going to be in a few years. Like,
no,
that kind of stuff. So,
yeah, I remember buying the first Baseball Prospectus annual in 2002. I think that was the first one. It had Adam Dunn on the cover. I remember that. I don't remember if that was the first one. It was the first one I bought. I was pretty far back. And then I was a subscriber for a long time. And so I remember when they started the Up and In podcast in 2010, it was pretty front and center on the website. And it was like, well, of course I'm going to listen to this. This is like the house podcast. And, and nobody knew who Jason Parks, unless you were like a Rangers fan who followed Rangers blogs, you didn't know who Jason Parks was. Jason Parks has gone on to quite a career. Obviously, Kevin Goldstein has had a career as well. And Goldstein was pretty well known because he had written for Baseball America, and then he went over to Baseball Prospectus. So he's pretty well known if you were a baseball internet person. So are you a .9er and all that?
Yes. Not from get go. I think I found them 80-ish, 70 to 80 podcasts in, but it was 2011 was my second year of college. And so I was like, I just kind of gravitated towards that. And
right. You have time that you will never have again in college, right? Yeah. So then assuming that led you to the Facebook group for the Up and In podcast, and then that led you to a magical post that I have not been able to locate. I have tried to find it by going through the Up and In group that is still in existence, that people still post in occasionally. They'll post mostly mattress references or, references to stuff from the show. Could not find for the life of me the Crash Jones post of, hey, I want to start this crazy Dynasty fantasy league. Now we did establish earlier, I think, that you weren't one of the original owners, right?
I was an original owner.
You
Yeah.
were an original owner. Somebody joined about 1 year in. I think I was thinking about Andrew Big Poop, who joined a year in, is what it was, because he knew Jordan, and that story, of course, is in his episode. Well, that story is in Jordan's episode, and then Big Poop's version is in his episode. Its version's pretty entertaining, by the way. It's going up soon, I promise.
Cool.
But and actually, it will be up by the time you hear this, so I don't know why I'm saying that. But anyway, it's not up as we're recording this because I'm a lazy son of a gun. So, okay. So I'm sorry. I would never get you confused with Big Poop. You have seemingly, well, you seem on the internet like you have very different personalities, but see, the two of you have something of a rivalry. So this is a great segue. Fantastic. Look at me go. So Big Poop seems to traffic in somewhat incendiary rhetoric, where he is, I think he was threatening to get a samurai sword off of Amazon Prime. He capitalized the word Prime to let you know how serious he was. He was going to get a samurai sword and pay you a visit. I don't know what he would have done with the sword. Maybe cut some cheese and apples. I don't know, but how do you feel about this? Like, are you really sort of just kind of were like, whatever. This happens to me all the time.
I don't know. I don't know what's up with that guy. I like that I think it's funny. I think it is funny that we have some sort of rivalry, and I honestly don't remember how it would have started or anything along those lines. But right. I welcome it. I find the trash talk, and I don't know. Yeah. I don't know about threats of violence, but
it's very abstract. Like, they're not actual threats of violence.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, listen, yeah. I have young kids. Like, threats of violence are not funny to me anymore. So, but I find it funny. So, yeah, I did ask him. I will point this out really quick. I did ask him. I said, "Do you have?" I'm recording Kyle's episode tonight. Do you have any words? And his quote was, "I think we all know what words I have for Kyle." But then he didn't say what those words were. I thought maybe this could go in a number of directions. It could be like, a pro wrestling reference or something, or it could be, but I don't know. So we're just left to wonder. And that's what's mysterious about Big Poop. And you'll see that in his episode. Like, he's very much, if he's very chill, like, to the point where it's like he's just chill, or he also could just be, a psychotic person who is very certain of himself. I'm pretty sure he's just chill, but I'm kidding. Seriously. But no, seriously, don't hurt me, please. But I have a family to support. Okay, all right, great. So he has some great takes on stuff, and so he takes great pleasure. I will also say he takes great pleasure in being he has been he details his history of shit posting around the internet, which is also very entertaining. So I'll stop talking about someone else's episode now, but it's you understand a little bit better. And he's also, listen, he's stuck in Northern Ohio, and he's got to make the best of it. As someone who's from Southern Ohio and lives in Central Ohio, it's different for me. So I just, the Northern Ohioans, they have a harder row to hoe, so to speak, if I can paraphrase the Black Keys. So yeah, I only wish that the Guardians thing had been announced after we talked, because I think he would have had some takes on that, because I don't know what you've been reading, or if you've read anything, or if this is even something that registered, but it doesn't feel like hardly anyone who is a big Cleveland fan is a fan of the name change. And I just attended a family gathering in Northern Ohio this past weekend and got an earful about that. I was like, so what name would you prefer? And my brother-in-law said, Indians. This is a highly educated professional man too. I mean, this is just how he feels.
Yeah. I have one friend. One friend who's a big Cleveland fan. So I messaged her and was like, "Hey, what do you think?" And she was like, "Yeah, it's good." My first impression, Guardians. You know, if they'd always been the Guardians, no one would care. I mean, we've got teams named after socks, so it can't be.
It's a good point. Yeah, and
It's
also the
it'll
Utah
become
Jazz.
tradition. The Utah
Yeah, I
Jazz.
mean, I know. I'm bringing up the Utah Jazz because I think there was some Twitter people that were like, "Listen, there's no way this is the worst name in sports when you have the Utah Jazz." That's all it was.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's there's that little local connection with the Guardians of
Yeah,
traffic. Yeah,
I honestly
so
wasn't. I honestly was comically unaware of the whole history of these. But I will point out that that was back when Cleveland in the 1920s and 30s. Cleveland was one of the biggest cities in America. I know that's hard to believe now. So was Detroit. Detroit and Cleveland were like two of the and nothing west of the Rocky Mountains was anything but a village, right? And those were the two titans of industry, those two cities, and Cleveland has. I mean, other than when they built Jacobs Field in the 1990s, now Progressive Field, I think, right? And there was a big revitalization of it has been a tough road for the city and the region over the last 75 years. And so I find it somehow a little apropos that and listen, I think I don't mind the name. It is a little strange. I mean, are they going to be called the Guards? I mean, you kind of need the one syllable version of the name. Just about every baseball team that has a more than a one syllable name has got a one syllable version. I mean, the Rockies, it's like the Rocks, right?
Yep.
ROX, right? I don't know how common that really is, but I've definitely seen it.
Yeah.
Or they would call the Indians the tribe. I mean, the Guards. It's I guess, right? I mean, I don't know what else it would be.
Yeah, it's yeah. Guards Tigers series starts next week. What do you think? It doesn't totally roll off the tongue, but
No.
It will. I think people will get used to it.
Yeah.
I wish they'd done something with the color scheme. It's kind of boring to just stay with the red, but
yeah,
that's you can deal with that in 20 years or 30 years or whatever.
Yeah. Well, hey,
there need to be more purple teams.
Yeah. I think there'd be a few people that would disagree with you. By that, I mean most other baseball fans. I'm just saying. So it's fine. No, actually, you should be happy about it because the purple. No other team's got purple, right? So
it's unique.
I mean, yeah, I would be happy with the purple, but so nothing against it. I don't know that. I understand why they didn't want to change everything all at once. So I mean, it made sense. I saw stuff on Twitter where it was like, if you just covered up the G and the U and part of the other thing, that it looks like Indian still, and it's the same script or whatever, whatever it takes. People are they're going to see pictures this next season of people wearing their home modified jerseys, where they they buy the Guardians jersey, thus giving the club what they want, revenue, and they tape over the rest. You're going to see that kind of stuff, just because they're going to be that way. Indians and Browns fans are just famous for being just completely devoted. Like they're stubborn people. They're devoted to their team. And I mean, these people stuck with the Browns being so famously bad for so long. So this reminds me, I wanted to get to this really quick because I know we got to wrap up. And I meant to say back during when we were talking about the Rockies and the heat they were getting from the press, that I wanted to say I felt your pain a little bit there because my NFL team that I am kind of stuck with, I can't really quit them, but I'll tell you what, I kind of hold them out here like this because it's they just let you down. The Bengals are kind of get a lot of the same. They get a lot of the same perception. Now they're not the only NFL team that gets this treatment. This sort of like everything they do is wrong. Certain teams, everything they do is right, and even if, everything, this idea that, because a team is quote unquote not smart, maybe they don't use enough analytics, or the GM doesn't have credentials or made a bad trade or whatever. It's like everything they do is wrong. Well, I've been dealing with that for a long time. I know exactly how it feels, and it's annoying. I mean, it doesn't. When the team gets good again, then the vibe changes, and then it doesn't come back till they start losing again. But I've it's gotten so bad NFL wise for me that I just have to kind of, you just try to find something else to do with your time. And I mean, I now live in a city where the game's not on every week. So they love showing the Browns games. Imagine that here, or Steelers games too, because anyway, I don't want to talk about that. So it does pass. Some other team will get that attention and it will go away. But the best thing they can do is win a few games. So, and I'm sure they're going to do it with Austin Gomber at the front of the rotation. Am I right? That guy's doing pretty good.
It's been, not me, but there have been people that I know that are like, oh, well, we don't want Austin Gomber to do well because then it justifies this terrible decision. But I feel happy for him. I'm glad that he's doing well. He was injured for a couple of weeks, kind of took some time off over the All-Star break, but that first half was, it's like, this is a guy who can be a piece of a good rotation, and the pitching hasn't principally been the problem this year. That's just the offense is not doing anything. Like Trevor Story's having a down year. Blackman is old still, which happens to all of us. So it's so yeah, it's nice that there's a piece there, and maybe you can look back on this in a couple of years as like, the Arenado deal was bad, but it put you in a good place for the next good team. But right now it's kind of like the next good Rockies team is 2025 or 6 or something. It's the farm system, even with, getting players back in that deal and in the Givens deal and in, whatever other deals they're going to make. It's like you're still working with something that's you've got Zach Veen, basically. You got the one guy that you drafted last year that was good, and that's going to be that's the farm system right now. So
yeah, that's the problem. Like we were implying earlier, the high level prospects are not coming back in trades so far. I mean, there's going to be more trades. We got the two big stays left, but I mean, the only really big prospect to change hands so far was Jesus Luzardo, and he has had a mess of a year, and his stock is down. And he went 1-for-1 for a pretty darn good player in Starling Marte. So that, I mean, Starling Marte he's not a superstar, but he's basically a star, mostly, more or less, right? When he wasn't cheating, right? Didn't he cheat? I think he cheated. Yeah. Anyway, but he's recovered from that, and he's presumably stopped cheating. He's the only major I mean, nobody wants to get rid of their prospects, and so that's why like it's probably. I mean, I assume you assume that Trevor Story is going to be headed out the door in the next 48 hours. Am I right? I mean,
yeah, I hope that. There's been a lot of chatter that like the front office kind of sees that the better option is to give him a qualifying offer that he's not going to take this offseason and just get the compensation pick.
Okay.
I don't think that's the better thing to do.
It would be a compensation round A pick, right? I mean, for Story, right? Because there's not a lot of those A picks. Like the Reds got one this draft with Trevor Bauer. That I'm kind of relieved about that. They got that pick and that he went on his way because
the specific details are I don't know exactly what pick it would be, but yeah, it's kind of like today has been the first day that I felt like maybe he will go. Maybe there's enough chatter there, but I mean, the Yankees have made additions. They got Gallo and they got Rizzo, and it's
Yeah, I don't know why they got both those guys, but they got them. Yeah.
Yeah. So the market for Story might be Oakland. I don't
Well, there
know.
are a lot of Reds fans that would like to get Story. I mean, the shortstop, they didn't bother getting a shortstop this season, and
Yeah.
they stuck a catcher at shortstop. I don't know if you've seen anything about that with Kyle Farmer. And frankly, well, they were trying to play Eugenio Suarez there. That kind of Suarez, he made 2 errors on opening day, and it kind of just hasn't. I mean, he made some okay plays too, but it's just not good. They figured, oh, he came up as a shortstop, he's fine. Well, then Suarez is had a really Moustakas gets hurt. Suarez has to go back to third, and then they have the catcher playing shortstop, Kyle Farmer. It's amazing to me. I don't think I can think of another C/SS that I can think of in my entire history of 40 years of baseball fandom. Almost 40 years. But suddenly, then wouldn't you know, the guy goes on a hot streak, and he's like, he got his average above 250, and everybody's like, yeah, keep that guy. Don't get a shortstop now because you got this guy who can be league average. The catcher, Farmer. Anyway, I don't know, man. Like, so I would have said Story would have been a great get. And we have, there are a few players that you could get. If I were Nick Kroll, that I would offer you for Trevor Story, but I don't know if I don't think they're gonna do it now. So I do think they will be able to trade him if they want to, but like you said, is the compensation pick worth more than the because he's a 2-month rental. So
yeah,
I don't know. Based on what's happened so far, I think maybe you're right. I think maybe they take the pick instead. So.
yeah, and I like I said, I don't think that's probably the right call, but it's one that they are likely to make because if you look at it, maybe even from a political kind of standpoint, the front office posturing that, well, that's another couple of months that we haven't traded him away, that we can say that we're offering him an extension. Like, this is a guy who
that jerk, he left us. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not trying to get you.
When Tulowitzki got traded, and then Tulowitzki was traded, they played Jose Reyes at shortstop for a little while, but then bringing up Story the next year, and he just out of the gate was like, "This is my job." Like, that's a guy that the Rockies want fans to rally around. He's the one guy, really one of the few guys on that team that fans do rally around. So maybe it looks better if, rather than we ship him out, you hold on to him, and then you say, well, we tried to work out a deal, but he wanted to go somewhere else. And so I mean,
all this money we're still paying Nolan Arenado, now we can't pay Trevor Story, right? No, I'm sure they wouldn't say it like that, but
but
listen,
they put it some way, and some people would be able to see through it. A lot of people won't. A lot of people will, be like, oh, why didn't he do a hometown discount or whatever, so.
It's all right. When Austin Gomber wins the Cy Young Award, it's all going to be vindicated. Am I right? So I seriously want that to happen. I want the Cardinals to give up the Cy Young Award winner for in his over the hill in his 30s third baseman. Okay, that's what I want.
Well,
I'm openly rooting for Austin Gomber. And
for sure,
for the other guy, I can't think of the other guys' names now, but I'm sure you could.
They all escape me. What I'm rooting for right now, though, is for the Cardinals to fall apart, and for Nolan to opt out and then sign again with the Rockies.
Oh, he has an opt out after this season.
His opt out is after this season. Yeah, that was part of kind of the leverage deal.
Well, because now Bridich is gone.
Yeah.
How does he feel about the guy who took over? Does he hate that guy too?
Probably Bill Schmidt is the interim guy. I mean, if I'm being cynical, they're going to not interview anyone else and just say Bill Schmidt is now the general manager, and it'll continue this lineage of Dan O'Dowd was hired in 1999, and then his second in command was Jeff Bridich, and his second in command was Bill Schmidt. And so there has not been any new blood in the system from that. So yeah, I'm holding out. I think it would be the funniest thing that could happen. It
seems a lot more likely than them hiring an ex-baseball prospectus writer like the Houston Astros did with James Click, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything, because Click was working in the Rays front office, and they hired, to replace what's his name, Luno, that got banned from or suspended. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think you're probably right, but I agree with you that they should do that, and that they also probably won't.
Yeah,
So, yeah, that's all right. It's all right. Austin Gomber, Cy Young, baby. All right.
that's right.
We should probably wrap this up. I
Sure.
really appreciate your time tonight, Kyle. I know there's a lot of Rockies chat, probably uncomfortably too much, too much for some people, but I enjoyed it. I know that once again there will be Rocktober. I'm not joking. It will happen again. I mean, I don't know how many years, but and it's I think it was one of the previous episodes we had a conversation about. I think it was John Gominski was talking about how when the Cubs were really bad and they were tanking, the team that's kind of having their last gasp now, that he got really into prospects, and that led him to all this other stuff, including up and in podcast and the league and stuff, because he didn't have anything to get excited about with the major league team. So he instead was following what Javier Baez did every night in A-ball. And that led him down his whole new path of fandom. And I think, you might have that same opportunity here. Once they get, maybe it's Zach Veen, right?
Yeah.
I don't know who they drafted this year. What's the name of whatever the first round pick is this year? So, maybe you've got that new avenue. But that's the great thing about baseball, is that it just takes forever, right? So, you don't have to win right now. You're going to win later. Yeah. So
I just hope I'm alive for it.
All right. And best of luck the rest of this year in the league. I know we didn't really talk about the league in general. But again, I can't wait for expansion. I hope it happens. If you know anybody, I'm happy to have 2 Rockies fans in the league. It's fine with me. We need to get the expansion draft is going to rule, because hey, these are a group of people that get excited about draft lotteries and all these other things. So I mean, I think honestly people are more excited about this than they are about actually playing the games. We've talked about that before. Nobody is excited about our league as much as people are for the rookie draft. So it's a bunch of prospect people. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, man. Have a good night. I'll talk to you again soon. Thanks again for coming in from Coors Field to join the little happy hour. That was great. I hope you enjoyed the game and everything. I meant to ask you about it. Ran out of time. So anyway,
it was good. That's all you need to know. It was good.
That's good. And the National League lost like they always do.
Of course.
Yeah. All right. Have a good one, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. See ya.
All right. Bye.